Hello and welcome to Das Nostalgia Podcast, episode 19. I'm your host, Anatoly, and today I have another very wonderful guest for your listening pleasure. Sir, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is David Wolinsky. I usually just say I'm an entertainment journalist. We cross paths because I do a project called Don't Die, which is an interview series.
It's great.
Thank you. That's very kind. I usually just say that it's trying to paint video games onto a broader cultural canvas, which sounds very snooty and self-important. But basically, it's just like trying to get a sense of it's trying to humanize a lot of things in and around video games. Like who are these people who have been making games for all these years? What are their jobs like? What are their lives like? Talking to people who play games or who used to play games, why do games no longer interest you? What seems weird to you about video games? What seems weird to you about video games and the internet? It cross-pollinates on a lot of different topics. But basically, it's just trying to paint these things as, human beings, not just products on shelves. Not that there's anything wrong, as you know, with talking about video games.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. And, before we go into our main topic, I always ask everybody do you remember sort of your first moment of introduction to an IBM PC or a compatible?
So, the literal first, no, because it's going to be fuzzy because I grew up in a house of nerds and early adopters. So I always remember, computers being around. I mean, I can still picture it just like the old house I grew up in. This weird upstairs, we had an attic, but downstairs from the attic, there was this computer in the corner of the room. So, I really I love your pinned tweet of defrag running in DOS. So, I definitely remember that. I remember just, the command prompt. I remember all that stuff. But when I have to drill down to okay, what do I think was the first time I was using it? I probably was getting help from my mom or my older brother, but I think it was called Print Shop Pro. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Or I don't know if we were pro. We may have just we may have not been affluent enough to have pro. We just had Print Shop. But it was making birthday cards for my dad. I remember there was a card, dot matrix printer.
Of course.
And it had penguins on it wearing sunglasses, and it just said, "I love you, Dad." On it. But growing up, my older brother was a little bit of a bossy dude, so I had to watch everything as far as games over his shoulders. I remember playing Rampage with him, and being so pissed when my parents were gone and the phone rang because we had to be responsible and answer the phone, and we were on one of the last levels and.
Oh no!
So I certainly remember it, and I have a lot of memories like that, but. First time, I don't know. It's always been around.
All right, well, that's cool. All right.
WordStar? I remember WordStar. That's not exciting, though.
Well, it's better. Most people remember games. You remember applications. That is actually not very common. I certainly remember my share of applications, but they never really stood up to as memorable exactly. You know what I mean? They were just there. I used Norton Commander my whole life essentially. I still do. And I love it now, but 25 years ago, I couldn't specifically tell you that I have any kind of feelings about a file manager. But we are here today to talk about one of my favorite topics in general. It's not a secret for anybody who knows me that I love Doom, especially not after the last 3 days of what happened to my tweet about Doom 2016.
I can't believe people were cussing and angry about video games online. You talk about DOS gaming and first experiences. I was a big Doom guy, also Doom 2. I remember I loved Heretic. I played Hexen, Strife. I didn't play Wolfenstein that much. This is back in the day when it's Okay, well, my friend has Wolfenstein, so like we'll just play it at his house, and then I'll get the next one. I don't even remember like how Doom showed up in my house. Like I don't remember buying it specifically, but I do remember like in that time playing with friends, just around the neighborhood or friends went to school with, and I don't even remember like how we got aware of like modding and how that was a thing. I remember with a friend, we were really into TIE Fighter,
Mm-hmm.
and he was obsessed with Star Wars. I mean, I was sort of just along for the ride, like, oh, this is an interesting game. And I remember he got this thing, he downloaded it where you could edit the cargo and
Uh-huh.
ships on TIE Fighter, and just you would scan a ship, and he had put it in so that after you scanned it, like it said tasty dick. That's what was on the ship. Like I remember it very clearly. And I think that was like too, like back in the day, like when there were kind of like RPG maker games, but not quite like today, where the idea was like, I guess like you go to a friend's house or something on a sleepover, like you stay up all night making a game for someone else. I didn't really understand that that whole thing of like, go make your own game, but there was no way to upload it or to share it with someone else. But
Right.
I do remember us getting way into Doom mods, and I remember there was like Star Wars Doom.
Mm-hmm.
But my memory is so fuzzy. I don't remember if that was a Doom or a DOS mod rather. Um, but I mean, that's how I remember being made aware of Doom mods, and from there just got everything I possibly could, because it was a way to like extend the experience of the game that you had beaten and played on like the hardest difficulty, and you thought you had seen all the secrets. So it was just, at that time, was totally insane that you
Yeah,
could like,
yeah.
oh, someone just made this, and some of it was pretty good, and a lot
Yeah.
of it wasn't. But the stuff that was just like, holy shit, like people are just making this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. The what was I gonna say? Did you have like internet at your house?
Oh yeah, I mean, we were huge nerds. I mean, the first website I went to was IGN.
Oh, okay.
That I remember because I had to go and ask my mom. I was like, how do you go to a website?
Huh. Did you
Um,
did you have BBSs before that? Like access to BBSs as well?
I must have. I mean, but I don't. Yeah, I must have, but I don't remember like which ones I went on to. I think by the time I was aware of that stuff and starting to delve into it, I was visiting more music bulletin boards than
Mm-hmm.
gaming stuff. So it's kind of weird. Like I don't even remember how I found out about this stuff. I mean, maybe it was like Happy Puppy, or it had to have been some website or someone telling me stuff, because it's just like the internet has completely riddled my brain. That like how did you find out about Doom mods, and like how did you find out like what were the good ones or where to find them?
Um, cd-rom collections, cause there were CDs with like Doom levels and whatnot.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they'd be in like those barrels at software stores or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
in Russia, there were no soft. Well, that's this whole separate story.
yeah,
And
yeah.
just also some BBSs, and of course later the internet. But well, what are your feelings on Doom in general?
I mean, I wouldn't even say I was obsessed with it, but I remember playing it all the time, and it was badass. I mean, I was at the right age at the right time. Where, when I say the right age, I mean I was probably a little too young for it, so it felt
It
like
is
that
the
was.
right age, yeah.
But I mean, we were always that house growing up where like people would come over here, go over to the house, and like see all the shows or movies that their parents wouldn't let them. And it's not that my parents didn't really care; it's just they weren't that really involved with like what were our media choices. So it didn't have that air of like I was doing something I shouldn't. It was just like my memory was like it was just the perfect trifecta. I don't know if I can even get to three of like, it was a 3D game, which was mind boggling.
Mm-hmm.
You were just running around and shooting shit, which was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like it was stupid in like the best way, where it's like it doesn't really matter what the story was. Like you're in hell or you're in Mars or where are you? And there's demons and there's guns, and I mean the levels were really well designed. I mean it seemed to fire on all cylinders. And I remember other computer games at the time. Like I remember there was some really shitty Superman game that my friend had, and I mean Mario was of course awesome, but it felt at that time, it felt so different, so unlike anything else.
Yeah.
I'm getting excited remembering that time because it's so different now. But I mean, I was pretty enthralled, and I was so psyched that there was going to be a Doom 2, and I don't know. Maybe that may have been like one of the first games that like taught me to like really appreciate video games, and I didn't realize that until you asked me to answer that.
Yeah, it's really weird to analyze like Doom in retrospect, right? Like if you were there, and it's like feelings are definitely not the same. Like you now that you're so much older and you understand game design, you understand how perfectly designed it is in so many ways. But also like you do appreciate it for that, like in 1993 and 1994, it looked like somebody cut a hole in your monitor and you were looking into like a different real world. Like that feeling, I don't think anything will be able to capture anymore.
No, I mean, I remember when I got a Super Nintendo, I had like a really bad fever, and I was playing Super Mario World, and like my eyes were hurting from how many colors were on screen. But I remember the similar feeling from Doom, where I mean, it's not like you thought it looked real, but at that point, nothing looked better than that game.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought Doom looked real enough. And of course, as far as things hurting, back in the day, you sit in front of like a 60 hertz monitor for like 2 hours. You get up and you think like your head literally is going to explode. Like in between the radiation and the like flicker. Like that's one of the things that I do not miss, and I sure did get it by playing Doom a lot. But yeah, no, I love Doom. I'm not gonna like spend time talking about my love for Doom because I do it enough. Like I think on a nearly daily basis as it is. But I would like to touch on a little bit about Doom modding in general. Specifically because recently I've been reading a lot of stuff because Doom's been born in the public eye with a new games release and John Romero making new levels for Doom, which is great. Those are great levels. I encourage everybody to play them. But Doom's been in the public eye and a lot have been written about it, like since like December to like January till now. We're in May now, and I think Doom modding is kind of misrepresented as far as those articles go, or just like what we now understand as modding is not what Doom had back in the day, right? Like, first of all, I think people need to understand, and I'm going to touch on it in like separate video or an article or whatever the fuck else, but it's Doom didn't ship with any tools. It was mod friendly in a way that you were allowed to attach your own bank of data, which would replace the game's resources, right? It was not mentioned in the manual. File formats were not described anywhere. So you had to be, when the game shipped, you had to be a hacker to figure out how to do any modding to Doom. And if you weren't a hacker, you just had to wait for the tools to be developed. Tools did develop very slowly, and they were really bad. Like the most popular map editor, the DAO, Doom's editing utilities, that map editor is awful. Even in its latest like version, like way into its Windows days, it was really bad, very counterintuitive. People managed to do amazing things with it, but like if you compare it to a couple of years later, build editor shipped with the Duke Nukem 3D, that was like night and day. So yeah, and so Doom map editing was very sort of slow and painful, and the first user Doom WAD was made entirely in a hex editor by hand.
Jesus.
Yeah, So you really needed to. So I think it's important to remember that now we have all those tools in script. Doom also didn't have any scripting. There was no, everything is hard coded in Doom. What also happened is there was this tool called Dehacked, which I think is great. That this guy went through all the versions of Doom and found the values inside the executable, like from everything from speed to every enemy to like which projectiles they shot to like how fast some of the animations were, and you were able to make a separate patch that was applied only to that specific version of the executable, and distributed with your WAD if you needed to sort of patch, and then the user would need to have dehacked as well, and you would like run it and it would patch your Doom executable to with those changes. And people did some really cool stuff. Actually, one of the WADs on my list like uses that to extent that I don't think anybody else ever did. But yeah, Doom modding community has been just growing since 1994, and I mean, it looks like people are still making WADs daily, right? But we now have all those tools and the source ports, and you can now have 3D previews while you editing the level and align textures in an actual 3D preview. You can write scripts to have enemies behave in a certain way and have cutscenes and whatnot. None of that was the case 20 years ago. Like, you really needed to like bust your ass to make anything.
Was id? I mean, were they always supportive of people doing all that stuff?
That was, yes, essentially that was the idea. Like, they allowed you to attach a bank of data. That's all they did, and that was seen as like a revolutionary thing at the time, and it was. But they knew that people would find the file formats themselves. The thing is, the mentality changed. So in the mid '90s, we sort of, and it did it kind of with Quake. They didn't divulge a lot about the file, but everything was a bit more accessible to hacking. The more,
Yeah.
and of course by the late '90s we have that philosophy that everything just should be moddable, and people provide tools and whatever. So it's the mentality changed. So yes, it was it did encourage to do that. But the way they did it was still, it was a very sort of simple thing that by nowadays standards we probably wouldn't consider as an encouragement to mod anything.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was finishing up some transcripts for my thing this week. I was talking to someone who used to work at id. In this interview, I did last year, so I forgot that I knew this, but we were talking about how I had actually dug up, I guess last year, the original README file from the original demo for Doom. And id had put like all these phone numbers in there where if you wanted to talk to them about the game, or if you had any questions or comments, like they wanted to hear from you.
Yep.
And that's been my perception, like even still today is, I mean, you throw the word community around today in video games, I think it means a very different thing. Like you're talking about like people just basically mobilizing, figuring out they can do this, working together. And it's not like the rewards at the end of that was like making shit was easy. I remember farting around with some of those tools. Like I never made anything. I mean, it's impressive. It's really, really, impressive that people stuck with it, did stuff. I mean, this was something before we get into all the different mods. Like I've heard like people end up getting jobs in games because they made really cool levels. Like,
yeah.
Did anyone who made like did anyone who made really great mods like end up doing anything of note in games later?
A lot of people. I don't actually specifically know, but like some people ended up working at id during the Doom days and after. Like Tim Willits, I think, who's like one of the few people who still works at id. Started out as just a Doom enthusiast, and American Mcgee is another one.
That's what I had heard. That's what I thought. Yeah.
So they were both, brought in to work on Ultimate Doom. Like American Mcgee, I think made most of the levels for the Ultimate Doom episode, and stuff. So they stayed in through, Quake, whatever, Quake 2, and Tim Willits, I think, still works there. So
yeah.
He's their primary level designer, so has been for quite a few years. So, but a lot of people who just generally did mods back in the '90s for Quake and whatever, like they went on to have jobs.
I know this is gonna annoy the shit out of you, but I did want to take a moment and talk about Doof.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean, we don't really have to, and I don't really have a ton that's substantial to talk about. But I mean, you and I, we met during the Game Developers Conference out in San Francisco in March this year, and during that week, I went up to Berkeley and I interviewed Stephen Horowitz, who worked on he worked for Broderbund for this division called Parody Interactive, and they did a couple of software titles. They really discourage anyone from remembering them as games. They've even printed on their boxes. It says it's a parody. It's not a game. I thought this was fairly more remembered than it was. Pissed. They made Pissed, which was a parody of Myst. But so I interviewed a guy who was working on those games. He was actually sort of responsible for the overall initiative to make parody games.
Oh,
and
great.
When I interviewed him, he mentioned a game that I had not heard about, and I don't think you had heard about, and I don't think most people know about this because there's nothing written about it online. They were planning to do a parody of Doom called Doof, and I have the box cover. I can share with you if there's like links you want to put in the notes or whatever. I mean, it never happened. They canceled it. I think they were going to build their own engine, which is a lot of work for a parody game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he owns it. Just like, like it wasn't going to be that good. It wasn't going to be that funny. It was,
Really.
Yeah. I got an exclusive there. But I mean, like that's sort of a testament to like how big Doom was. I don't really know that like you want to play it as like a nerd shooting stuff. I think there's a lot of other things we have that have filled that niche, but Doof, it almost happened. I don't think you have anything to say about that, do you?
No, I should probably refrain from any comments.
Well, you'll see. I mean, I'm not trying to tease to an interview. I'm just like, how many chances am I going to have in my life to like mention Doof and have it be relevant to a conversation? Yeah.
I guess. How about this? I'm gonna put the image, the box, as a thumbnail for the podcast.
That's gonna be great.
Let's see what happens.
That's in a way, that's almost a mod, but not really.
No, not at all. But it applies.
In a way, it's the.
It could have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's actually get to the chopper. Let's get to the meat of the.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Doof is not a bad transition into talking about Simpsons Doom. I mean that.
Yeah, that's a legendary one, really.
Well, I mean, again, I hate to make it sound like we're so old, but like I had no sense of like what was a popular mod, and like Simpsons Doom was like the main one that I remembered. I mean,
I think it's just something about it that's just so appealing that I think that's the one that most people were like, yes, Simpsons Doom, I'll get it. Makes perfect sense. Why not? And yeah.
Well, I mean, I saw people were talking about it. I don't know when this comment was, but someone's memory was that they were too afraid to play regular Doom, so they played this.
Oh.
But my memory...
Simpsons Doom is really violent.
Yeah, my memory was like... It didn't like scare me, but it was like kind of disturbing.
It's disturbing. It's really weird.
Yeah, but they did a lot of work on it. I mean, I don't even know like what goes into like. They did a lot of like thinking about it. Like they thought about like, okay, Ned Flanders is the imp, and the Bumblebee Man is the flying demon, and it's like, well, that makes sense. But they recorded all the audio. They did all this stuff. And it's so fucking noisy.
Yes.
It's so loud. Like, they recorded all this sound off the TV, and I think they wanted to let you know they had it. It's just so loud. So that's my main memory. It's like, it's super loud, it's super violent.
And the sprites are, like, gigantic. So, yeah, like, instantly just, like, I cannot name any of the characters because I don't watch Simpsons.
Sure.
But I just... So they're like on the two weapons they redrew the hands, like their yellow Homer hands.
Right.
And they redrew the Doom Guy sprite as well for multiplayer you can play. It's in a separate, it's three separate WADs, like the graphics, the sound, and Homer himself. And
you probably had to like download it overnight.
yeah, back in the day, well, no, it's really not that big. To be honest, even Doom is not that big. Like Doom shareware is really small. I think that's recently was the story that like, like whatever it is, the average internet page is now bigger than Doom. Well, first it's a shareware Doom that they're talking about, and also compression also did exist. So. So it was usually in an archive, but yeah, you didn't need to spend all night to download Simpsons Doom. It wasn't that big, but it's the one that a lot of people remember fondly, and the one that I would recommend trying. Absolutely, I would say go if you've never experienced one of the most classic Doom WADs of all time. I mean, now those things are so easy to use. You just drag the icon onto another icon, I'm sure, and it'll just run.
Yeah.
And it doesn't use any like hacking. It doesn't use dehacked. It's just a simple, like traditional, just replaces the graphical entries.
I mean, this is sort of like a somber note for it. Like for my thing, I wanted to actually like last summer. Actually, it's almost a year. Like I looked at the email this morning. It was a year almost to the day. I was doing some digging because I wanted to talk to the person who made Simpsons Doom, and like I wanted to find out like what happened to them. Are they in the industry? What are they doing? Why did they make it? I mean, this is sort of like a somber note, but it only took a couple minutes of searching to sort of realize that he died. He's not alive anymore.
Right. Wow.
I think he was in a car accident. I'm not really sure what it was, but I guess like the origin of it was someone. What was his name? It was Mike something. Shit, I wish I had written it down. But the guy who created it, he didn't finish it. Like someone else found it,
right,
on whatever it was, and he contacted. I mean, it's funny because like this is a guy working on a thing with someone else's intellectual property with someone else's intellectual property, but like he got permission to sort of take it the rest of the way, finish it, publish it online. That guy is still around. His name's Walter. And I did email with him at least last year, but I mean, I'm just curious, like still like why? Sure, Simpsons was popular at that time, Doom was popular at that time, but it's not like people were necessarily asking for it.
Right, yeah, and just, but it seems like so obvious in retrospect, right? Like, and that's why I think that it got so popular. It's just because everybody's like, yes, of course, Simpsons Doom, why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very early '90s thing.
It's really basic. I mean, there isn't really that much more to say.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for like. I was also surprised. Like, I know you sent me a list over of a couple that caught your eye. I was surprised that there were. I mean, I don't know if just like they haven't been preserved or people haven't been writing about it, but like there weren't a ton of DOS Doom mods, at least that there's still like record of. Is that right? I mean, I know.
No, everything is the reason. Well, my list was. I mean, we said we were going to talk about like the weird stuff,
right?
No, all the Doom levels have been preserved for years since the first WAD has been preserved and they all preserved and dated. People in the community were like essentially figured out how to like, even before the modding community existed, they sort of like they came up with a format of how to sort of describe your WAD in a text file and stuff.
Yeah.
And people still do it in that format to this day. Ever since the very first WAD. So everything about Doom modding is really well documented. Like it's in the Simpsons Doom, like there is one of those files and it tells you that the original creator was so and so, and it tells you there's like a paragraph of text there, sort of like explaining why there's three separate ones and blah blah blah. Like that's so no. Like I just picked. If we were talking about like Doom WADs in general, we'll be here for like until the end of the year. There's so many of them. I actually would like to mention one that's not on the list. Is I was replaying the other day. Is Aliens Total Conversion. This was the first total conversion for Doom came out almost a year after Doom, but I recently revisited it, and it's really well done. Like, it used dehacked and everything, which is pretty progressive, and it has like sound effects and stuff from aliens while you're walking around the levels and stuff. And it's actually, Doom engine is fairly primitive. The reason that you never notice those sort of limitations while playing Doom levels is because the levels were designed around those limitations, like it never needed sloped surfaces or whatever, because, whatever, it was just this abstract thing. So now that it's trying to replicate something, it's pretty different. Like, it uses all those kind of like sprites and pillars to make it look environments look alien-y and stuff. So it's really, really cool. Not the best game ever. It's really difficult, and weapons are scarce and whatever. But like, as a first effort, I mean, it took, with the tools that I've described in the beginning of this podcast, it's a miracle that happened.
Yeah. I mean, you sent over that other one, the Sky Maybe.
Oh, Sky Maybe. Are we going to talk about the big one? That's a big one, really. Because, again, imagine the tools that I've told you about, right? Especially dehacked, where it's literally just hacking the executable and the references in it. And that's how the Sky Maybe works. I mean, Sky Maybe has crazy shit like... I don't know. Have you so you say you just watched videos. You haven't.
I watched some videos of it.
You should have played it. Like, it's quite different playing it yourself.
I mean, I could tell. I mean, obviously, I saw that like they changed some stuff with the heads up display, but that's the least of it.
Yeah, like it has like the regular zombie man like retreats away from you after you shoot it. It becomes, if after it dies, it becomes a shotgun guy, and after you kill that, it becomes a demon, and like after you kill that just gets like ripped in half. And it has like scrolling doors, like you think it's a door, but it's just a scrolling wall texture. And it has imps that fire BFGs, and when you kill them, they just shrink. It has those like the maps that are made for it is just like this weird Lego world that there's a story how you got sucked into like a Windows 3.11 installation, and that's what you're fighting through. Like that's what the story of the WAD is. Like there's things that you come up and it's like a Windows thing. It's like, don't push that button, or like don't open that door, and you open it and the game crashes into DOS with the prompt "I told you so." There's the Windows 3.11 error button that you press, and it instantly somehow starts spamming your memory, so like you run out of memory, so the game like slows down to like 1 frame a second intentionally.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing that struck me about it. I was like, oh man, I thought Simpsons Doom was weird when I was growing up, but like I think this may be totally insane.
It's the pinnacle of that, and that's why it's very divisive. A lot of people sort of like wrote it off when it came out as like, oh, this is just like jerking us around and stuff. But like even at the time, people were like, I think this is a work of art, to be honest. Like,
well, I think they spent like 2 years on it, right?
Something like that. Yeah, it was a very knowing how it was made. It's like seeing the end result. I can't even like begin to process how. I mean, it has like the explosive barrels chase you like very slowly. You never notice it, but if you stand in one place and you look at them very closely, they're moving towards you. It's.
I mean, all that too, but like one of the things that struck me is just like, man, it is super colorful. Like my main memory of a lot of these, these types of games, and also a lot of mods is like, I mean, there's like purples and bright yellows and reds, and I mean, it's very loud.
Yeah, it plays like classical music in your face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you know much about like who made this? Like, what was the deal?
No, I don't. There's also a file with a description that I really haven't read past the story.
No, I mean, I poked through these, but like a lot of times there's just like these things are full of like strange in-jokes between whoever made it at the time.
Basically what they are, yeah. No, I don't know much about who or why or whatever. I just I've seen the aftermath around the time it came out. where
it's laid waste to your life.
It is like it was a very divisive for like weird reasons. I mean, like, yes, like people sort of like didn't. I guess it was that first thing where just like something is essentially. I mean, half the Doom mods nowadays are that. Like we didn't have like the joke mods is like a really big thing. You'll be walking around and then like something ridiculous happens and a face will pop up, or like instead of like a gun, your gun will turn into like a turret or something. It's like it's whatever. But back then nobody did stuff like that, and Sky May Be was essentially was what was shown that was possible. It was possible to really just fuck with you for like no gameplay purposes. You can't play that mod without cheats. Like you because like almost I mean everything is like, I mean imps should BFGs like repeatedly, so you're gonna die within like 5 seconds. So like it's like IDDQD is like your first go-to and stuff. So
I know you don't. I mean, these are not DOS games, but I was curious, like, like parts of this sort of reminded me of like Stanley Parable or the Beginner's Guide. I mean,
Yeah, I guess it has that sort of like
a little bit.
Yeah, it has that proto sort of like in referential sort of kind of things.
I mean, I think the takeaway from this, what they were saying was, I don't know. It was just so weird. I mean, that's very much what my fixation is always on. It's like the who and the why. But I mean, this person was just talking about like in the description, like they wonder what Bach would make of this mod, and that they put his music in their game. And I mean, it was just they wanted you to download the mod. They wanted you to give them money so they could buy Quake. I don't really think they were necessarily thinking too much. I think it's just part of it's too, just like that sort of prankster impulse of like, it's funny to drop a thing online and then you just don't even know what people are going to do or make of it. And it's 20 years later. Who cares?
So again, I want to stress that we're discussing weird mods in here specifically. Like I think the least weird thing we talked about the aliens total conversion is like the most normal thing we're going to mention today,
right?
So we want to like go through like the interesting things. So any other input on Sky May Be?
I don't think so.
Are you going to try to play it?
I was going to say of all of the ones, well, there's another one we're going to talk about later, but I mean, it looks so crazy. I mean, it's hard to describe.
You should try it. I would also encourage people to try it. But of course, what can I say? Just don't. You've heard what I said. So it's not exactly. You won't find the fun gameplay there, but you'll probably see Doom in a way that you've never seen before.
Yeah, I mean it's super bright, it's super weird, it's strange, it's dumb, it's really bizarre.
You'll laugh a lot, and you'll also be frustrated a lot. So
yeah, it's a different kind of Doom.
Yeah, so that's that.
Yeah.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, sure.
Are we just going down? Are you looking at my list literally?
Yeah.
Is it the order that we're going to go in? I just put them in random order, to be honest.
Oh, well, you had the Marines one next.
All right, yeah. So that's actually the one that we know, the who and the why, very explicitly. And it's a really weird one because there's a SWAD called, well, it's referred to as Marine Doom, but the WAD itself is called Marine 1 officially. That's what the description says on it, and that's a sort of a weird thing that in the sort of, I think around 97 or something, right, U.S. Marine Corps decided that they wanted to like start something to train Marines using current technology, and the people who were put on it were like, why don't we just get Doom? So the Marine Corps bought a copy of Doom, and a whole bunch of people, a few people worked on this one level map called Marine 1, primarily designed by Sergeant Dan Snyder, who I'm almost certain wound up as being a consultant on a commercial build engine game called NAM, which was actually just a Duke Nukem 3D total conversion. I talked about it on the Build Engine podcast. I think it's severely underrated. It's considered to be one of the worst shooters of all time, and I will say it is not by launch. It's just very misunderstood. and bound by its limitations. But I will actually say it's a good game. Yeah, go listen to my Build Engine podcast, people, if you haven't. I talk how much I love one of the worst games like of all time or something.
Yeah, we have a lot in common.
But I actually maintain it's a good game and not a bad game.
So, but I mean, like this sounded like this was made for like a recruiting tool.
No, it was made for like tactical sort of training to work.
I think it was.
In its team. It's specifically like it was like stated in the thing that it was meant to run like around the office where people could communicate. With 4 people, it was. First of all, it's really hard and it's really ugly. It's like this map with like barbed wire and army man soldiers. Everything's really brown, and the enemies are like really overpowered. They started with like Ultimate Doom, I think, but they eventually got converted to Doom 2. So Marine Corps paid for at least 2 copies of Doom, and so it has all those chain gunners and whatever, and they'll crank up to be really, really high. So you meant, and each player when they at their spawn point gets a different weapon, so they all have like a different sort of Team Fortress almost like thing, and you're supposed to communicate and you're supposed to kill everybody and sort of take the point. It's really not entertaining if you're playing by yourself, or honestly, it's not entertaining at all.
Well, it's not supposed to be. I mean,
it's not. No.
Yeah, I mean, like that was sort of my understanding from the stuff I had read about it. Was like, in part, I think just like the fact that they were using it was like intended to be like to get people interested, like people of that age, like interested, like, oh wow, the military is really cool. They have Doom, or they're doing stuff with Doom. But I mean, what I read, like, it's more about like training for like, you know, seeing how people behave in chaotic situations, or like how they deal with like repetitive decision making.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like the kind of Doom where, you know, carefully constructed narrow hallways. It's a lot of really.
It's just like it's an open field essentially with like a couple like structures. It's just its uniqueness of it, I think, is what made it sort of legendary.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I had on my thing, I had interviewed a Department of Defense consultant, and I mean, he wasn't privy to anything with like America's Army. He couldn't really talk to me about that. But he was curious about this mod. I mean, like you said, it's really boring to play solo, but can you play with like AI squad mates?
No,
I didn't think so.
No.
So if you have no one else to play with, you're just going to
get shot within like 5 minutes. It's
that doesn't sound fun at all.
No. It's
no.
And it's also really I was revisiting it a few days ago, and it just struck me how ugly it was.
I mean, it's notable in like.
Well, in a historical sense, definitely.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's notable in the same way, like, you know, like the army had a special version of Battlezone produced for them, you know, back in the day. So, in the same way, only more weird, you know. Like here is like, because the modding was available, it didn't go to id and were like, make us a version of Doom for, you know, for the military. No, they just like, we'll make our own version of Doom for the military. You know what I mean? They just took advantage of the modding ability.
I bet id would have done that though if they asked.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, it's I mean, you know, I've read a ton, and I'm sure it's no great shock that, like, you know, if you engage in warfare the way that it's like typically shown in movies or in other video games, you'll just get killed.
You're done. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it is interesting that like this exists. I know that there have been other things. Like
I don't know if that's if that was effective at all. I honestly cannot tell you. Even if 4 people who are like Marines are playing that level and trying to sort of work out some kind of a tactics together, I really don't see it. Like maybe there was something, but I cannot see it being effective in any way.
Yeah. Do you know how long they took to make this?
I think a little while. I really don't know. There is an interview that actually I think puts somewhat of a time frame on it. Or some kind of like a article from that time when it got written up a lot. I think it tells you, but I do not remember what it is.
No, it's okay. I mean, I could send you that. I think you already retweeted me from this morning, but there was that like 1997 story from Wired that, I mean, it's an interesting read. I think it's like it tries to be really skeptical of this thing and tries to endorse it, but I felt like after I read that, I was like, I don't really know. I mean, this is just cool that it exists, and I think like people will check it out once and be like, huh, that's interesting, and then probably not play it again.
Yeah, pretty much. There is no reason to. Like, that's one on our list. That's the first one I'll be like, you're probably better off not play it. And you just, if you never knew about it, just know it exists and maybe look up a couple of screenshots and you're good.
You're good to go.
Yeah,
read about
pretty
it.
much.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah, I mean, the next one you had on the list, I don't really understand why it's called Cyber Dreams.
I don't know either. And apparently I've learned recently after mentioning it that some people don't like it. And I think it's great. It's sort of a WOD that sort of subverts Doom in many ways.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, of all the ones that we're talking about, I think this is one of the ones that, like, oh, I wish I knew about this back in the day, because it's pretty cool. It's like, because a lot of the mods we've been talking about are like more concept heavy, and this is much more about like drilling down on like the what's called like the mechanics of the game.
Yeah,
like,
you're supposed to understand how to sort of break and exploit mechanics in order to progress literally. So, and also I would like to point out that's another completely like vanilla WOD. Like, it doesn't use any hacking tools. You don't need dehacked for it. So it's just it's a map pack essentially, but the maps are very smartly designed. So the point of the WOD is I don't know if we've mentioned this yet, but WOD actually stands for where is all my data, except for it doesn't, because they just wanted to, they wanted to call it a WOD. There is a cyber demon or several on each map, and killing them unlocks the doors to the exit. And you're traditionally not really given any weapons that you'd be able to kill cyber demons with. You're supposed to sort of use their behavior and the levels to your advantage. There's a lot of telefragging going on, so you're going to be like teleporting inside cyber demons a lot and blowing them up, and you need to time things perfectly, and you need to sort of run around in circles around them perfectly, and you need to know how much, like, in between the rockets. There's, I think the level 2 is there's 2 cyber demons, and there's a maze that leads to, like, not a maze, but sort of like a zigzag pattern, like at the grocery store or movie theater, like before a ticket line. So like you run towards a cyber demon like it was the ticket booth, and you're sort of like sidestepping as he's shooting at you. So you need to know what the shooting rate is, to avoid the rockets. And then at the end of it, if you make it, you literally like go through a teleport, and the teleporter exit is right underneath him. So you just blow him up and stuff like that. And it's really creative. It's really well done. I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite, from what I saw, because like when Doom was new, this was like the time when like I was playing everything on like the hardest mode, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna just basically bring it on. Like, let me see like what's the most challenging you can make it. Like, I was really impressed that there was one part of this where it was like a cyber demon stuck in a pen, and you just have to punch it to death.
Yes.
It's just like a giant fuck you to the player, but I mean, I have to imagine that that's just like a shitload of fun and incredibly frustrating. But it's like every time you die, it's kind of your fault.
Yes,
I don't know. To me, that's my favorite kind of like challenge in a game, where it's just like, well, you got to learn and you got to get better. There's no getting around that.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool map pack. I really do like it, and I would encourage people to check it out.
I mean, I saw some reviews up on that link you sent me, and I did see that I don't understand why it's polarizing. Is it just like people don't?
I also don't. I guess people don't particularly like gimmicky stuff. Like, I tweeted about it, and I also got responses being like, "What a shit mod that was, and I'm like, I do not understand the reaction. I think it's fucking brilliant in many ways. So
it's like a challenge mode.
it's
really...
yeah, like it's almost a puzzle game, you know?
Yeah,
like it's a puzzle game while you were like constantly being bombarded with rockets. So it's I think it's a lot of fun. Anything, but I guess some people just are not into like twisting the game's mechanic as much. I guess like I only welcome it. I mean, I've been playing Doom for so long. It's fine with me if somebody twists the mechanics. That just puts an additional challenge on me, an unexpected one. I welcome it, but I guess maybe just not everybody. I do not understand why some people think it's bad. Yeah,
I don't know. It's internet stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we only have two WADs left, and there's
the next the
next one.
Go ahead.
I don't know. Did you understand? Like, did you go we're gonna talk about WoW WAD, and did you look at the comments in the thing?
Yeah.
So there was this. It's a legendary WAD in a way, where it's a room with a cyber demon in it.
Yes.
And the BFG, and the cyber demon is standing. It's a broken level, so you drop down in the pit that's untextured with the cyber demon, and it's a giant hole of mirrors effect. The cyber demon most likely will kill you instantly. I don't know why it became so popular, but I think like the most recent comment on it, I think, was from this year.
I mean, this was made. I'm looking at it now. It was made in at least it was uploaded here, 1999. But I saw like someone even recreated this in Doom 3.
Yes, it's legendary. Like
I don't understand. We talked before about like people. I mean, this is probably some sort of joke.
Yes, it is.
Or something. It was like, it's not done, and they probably were like clearing off their hard drive or something. Like, whatever, I'll just back it up on the internet. I mean, it's like 30 seconds. There's not a lot going on.
It's a broken level.
There's a gun, there's like 4 boxes of ammo, you grab it, you die. You fall into a pit and you die, or it's just like, that's it.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
I mean, that's it.
But people are still talking about it, like 16 years later. 17 years later. It's incredible that people do refer to it. You'd see it come up in conversations. And again, yes, people recreating it in different engines. I don't understand. I mean, yes, it's like a joke of the community, essentially. You know, like it became the butt of all jokes, you know. But... again, right? It also actually, I think, showcases the difference between communities quite now. Like, yes, nobody's specifically being mean about it, right? There's so many 5-star reviews on that WAD.
But it's hard to tell, like, maybe those are people, like, that's also part of the joke. I mean...
Well, of course, it's a part of a joke to be like, yes, 5 stars, it's great. It's like the worst thing ever. But I think if something like this happened today, that person would have been like harassed online to death. You know what I'm saying? Like they would probably end up killing themselves over like a Doom level. But instead, that WAD is being like paid tribute to, you know, for like, you know, soon to be 20 years, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a comment here. It says 5 out of 5. It's okay. I feel like that kind of sums it up. I mean, I hate even like dwelling on it. Like,
yes, you really shouldn't spend any time on it.
Yeah, I wish we could just go back and be like, just go download it. Here's the link, and then go listen to it, because it's like,
yeah, I think we've paid more attention to it in this podcast than people have throughout the 17 years of its existence.
The amount of time we've been talking about it takes longer than Googling it, downloading it, installing it, playing it. Like, that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah. Yep. But see, we're laughing, right? So,
yeah, I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. 5 out of 5 stars.
It's okay. 5 out of 5. It's all right. I guess this was the last one that we had on the list was I guess this is kind of the opposite of the last two in a way. I mean, it's just called Nuts.
Yeah, and it's actually not. It wasn't made for for vanilla Doom, but it just happens to kind of work with vanilla Doom for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some videos of it, and it seems to grind machines to a crawl.
On vanilla Doom, all the monsters will start disappearing like 30 seconds in. Basically, it can't render that much, but it's possible to run it. But here's this another famous WOD called Not Swad, and I don't remember what the number of enemies is off the top of my head, but
it's 10,617.
Yeah, it's more than like an entire first game combined.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you're just standing on this elevated platform, and below you, like a whole bunch of unalerted imps and other enemies. And needless to say, the second you make any kind of noise, they all get activated because you're just in a giant open field. And the way do you actually know how the monster AI in Doom works?
No.
It actually goes through it has that sound. The sound carries through open spaces, essentially.
Oh, yes, yes. No, I knew that, yeah.
So you instantly alert everybody in a big map, and because it's that many enemies, even if you're like playing in a source port, I think, if you just play in a modern source port, and well, maybe nowadays you can do it, but like, even a few years ago, it would just hold everything to a crawl, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a map with like 10,000 imps and other enemies. It's imps as far as I can see, and and you can play it in vanilla mod, not for long. For after a few seconds, you won't be able to tell what's going on. But I don't think you'll ever be able to tell what's going on. I don't know. Maybe some people finished that map honestly. I don't really see how. I mean, you've given the weapons. You got a few BFG shots, and you got another weapon right behind you. I forget which one it is. And there's also other enemies that shoot rockets, so it's possible that they'll be able to clear out some of the enemies for you, because Doom has the infighting
right
for projectile enemies of different types, and so I don't know, maybe, but again, it's a gimmick level of just like how many can we put in a map.
It's I think it's more just like, I mean, my memory playing Doom at that time, I think it's just like that sort of fantasy of like, oh man, I wonder if I could survive if I was dropped in with 10,000 enemies. It's rather than like these very strategic, careful interactions with like 4 or 5 or 6 at a time. I mean, I'm not surprised that something like this exists.
Yeah, no, me neither. I will probably say maybe it's more fun if you like playing co-op, 4-player, like how fast you'll be able to clear it. That could happen. I don't know. It's more just like an experiment than anything else. I don't know if I will specifically recommend it exactly.
I mean, it has fewer reviews than WoW.
Well,
so it's less popular. It's so I mean, that should tell you something.
I guess. But WoW is great, is what that's telling me.
WoW is the peak. It's the pinnacle. It's the one that all others should be measured against.
Pretty much.
But it would probably take you like, I don't know, like 15 minutes or something probably to survive if you're able to. I mean, that's probably if you're really good. Otherwise, it's a complete, it's a complete slaughter.
Yeah. Also, it will probably make your machine feel not well.
No, it's gonna need to go to sleep after that.
Yeah,
it's just gonna completely shut down.
Yeah. Well, this is actually, here's the thing. When David and I originally had this plan, we were going to talk about weird Doom mods, and there's so many weird Doom mods out there, but as I've decided to limit everything to DOS vanilla specifically, I've realized that there aren't that many weird vanilla Doom mods,
R-
just
right.
because they were so hard to do. I mean, look at the Sky May Be is probably the pinnacle of all of that, but also a weirdest one by a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, when I mentioned before, or maybe you can just cut that out or something. When I mentioned before that, like I mean, I obviously knew there were a lot of Doom mods, but it surprised me that there weren't more that were really crazy unusual. I mean, yeah, there were those like um there were those CDs that we were talking about
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
before, but most of those are just sort of like those aren't the crazy ones. Those are just like sort of like here's a couple of like it's like a map pack,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like some of them are generic, some of them are fine, but again, back in those days, it was like, oh, this is just kind of cool that there's anything to extend the
Yeah.
experience. But I think in hindsight, at least, like that's sort of what I wanted. That's what I wanted to revisit with you is just like, yeah, like Simpsons Doom is the main thing I remember, but I'm sure that wasn't it.
Yeah,
But
I
I
mean,
was,
there's plenty. Like, I mean, especially if you get like serious total conversions. There's like Star Wars, there's Ghostbusters Doom, right? Like, I played, I think in the early 2000s, the Hellraiser Doom, and stuff.
oh,
But
sure.
but but
Yeah.
but I wouldn't call any of that, particularly weird. You know what I mean? They're mostly all of them like sort of played straight. So we kind of found, at least I think, the few that we've mentioned,
Yeah.
uh, are the ones that sort of stand out by, not necessarily playing it straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the number certainly increased as the Doom modding scene changed a little bit. So what happened is, as we know, Doom is like one of the most portable games of, well, probably the most portable game of all time, right? Like,
Yeah.
because it's been open sourced so early, you can play it on your phone, you can play it on your digital camera, you can play it on the ATM, you can play it on your TV, you can probably play it on the microwave and the refrigerator already. I'm certain, and I'm sure like 2 years from now I'll be playing it on my credit card. So, but because of that, so much community integrated so much into it, like the most popular sort of source ports that do Z-Doom and GZ Doom and all the derivatives, include scripting capability that's now is really extensive. Like, you can change anything in the game, and you can make people make cutscenes and stuff, and like and the tools, you can now just edit WADs inside, with the graphic editor and see changes instantly. You can the WADs even themselves, instead of using the weird proprietary file format, they now use the Quake 3 format, the PK3, which is a zip file. So, you can now just throw files into an archive and it runs. And we have level editors that have visual previews, and you do all the placements and textual alignments visually, versus just like editing in a value that's a number.
Mm-hmm.
So the modding community for Doom bloomed incredibly because of this, and the amount of weird mods did sort of just, there's so many stupid, the most ridiculous sort of joke wads that are like not worth anyone's time, but there are thousands of them now. Like, you sent me one, the Shrek one.
Yeah. I don't
That's
know. Yeah. It's like it's almost like Doom has become this thing where you you just take something else you love or that you hate and you run it through it, and like that's an experience worth having. Like, like, yeah, there's Shrek Doom, but I don't really know like if anyone's made like that 70s show Doom, or if anyone's made like Frasier Doom
I'm
or
sure it's happening.
Yeah, or like Guy Fieri Doom or
You should
Axl
do that.
Rose Doom. Maybe, if I get my grant, that's what I'll do. But I mean, it is like, it is interesting how it has asserted its place where still, even today, like, people are playing around with it, even though, as we mentioned before, like, yeah, there is a quote unquote new one coming out. There is something
Who
about it
cares?
that I don't know. I mean, like, I'm curious just because, like, I'm curious.
New Doom is New Doom. I think Doom is just so much a product of its time and the 6 people who made it. That I don't think. I mean, hey, listen. Who knows? New Doom could be a fine game, right?
Right.
But it's not going to be Doom. That's the thing. Like Doom is a game that I wish we had some kind of official data, because the productivity across the world, the output decreased for at least a year or two because people were playing Doom at work. Everywhere you went, in every university, every office, people were playing Doom in every house. I think literally the world's output decreased because of Doom. It was everywhere.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if this is actually true, but I've heard the myth. I mean, do you know about when Dragon Quest gets released in Japan that
everybody just quits for it?
I don't think they passed a law, but I think they decided to stop releasing it during the week. I think they may release it on weekends or something, so that across the board people are actually still going to work instead of skipping work.
Right.
So I mean, it's plausible.
It could be, but that was not the usual sort of thing, 20-something years ago,
No.
And it was so universally global. Is that even a word?
Yeah, why not?
But yeah, so I'm fine with a new game, Doom, coming out. I mean, I played Doom 3. I don't think it's very good, but it's a game. And it's called Doom, but it didn't have an impact that Doom has. Nothing can have an impact that Doom has.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about honoring that, respecting that, and not I mean, I get why people are going back to the well, but I mean, people are still going to be doing mods for the original Doom.
Of course, that's what I said. Actually, I think from a software preservation also point, it's incredible, because if you want to ensure the longevity of your game, open source it. I mean, again, look at you can play Doom on everything. You can play Doom on your dick, I'm sure. It's because it's been open source. People will be playing Doom after John Romero will die, after John Carmack will die, after I will die, and probably after my children will die as well. People will be playing. It's a very depressing picture, but people will be playing Doom at that point in time as well. Something.
I think it's even it's on graphing calculators. It's on everything. So I mean, eventually, the singularity will occur, and we will become part of Doom.
Yes. So, but no. But I mean, seriously, it's never going away for those reasons. It's historically as preserved as it can be. I'm glad that the community had the good faith to sort of start preserving this stuff early on. That's rare.
Yeah, it is.
That everything is so perfectly tagged, and there's this websites that sort of copied the FTP. It was on the FTPs, but the format was there, so those websites just copied the FTPs, and it's all there. It's great that I can pick up the first mod for Doom ever, first WAD, which is called Orig WAD, and that only has a little bit of history and what about it, but it's also dated. I know when that happened, which is for video game history, PC game history, is incredibly rare.
Yeah,
you don't know nothing, and for user-created content, forget about it.
People still don't even actually know when the original Mario Brothers came out. That's still under contention.
Is that true? Not even
it is true.
Not even Nintendo of Japan can tell them? Wow.
No, we still don't know.
I didn't know that, but console history is usually better documented than, well, not usually. Console history is better documented than PC history, because of the proprietary, things of the platforms.
Yeah.
So those things are at least stored all in one place. With the open platform, we never know. So yes, it's great that Doom modding community exists in the way it does. It's great that it's persevered and preserved and only blossomed into something bigger. And Doom did become something bigger, right? Doom is everywhere, which is why
they made a movie. They made a movie out of it.
Yeah. No, that never happened.
And Doof.
Yes. All right. Oh, that is so the thumbnail for this.
But it was huge. I mean, it's stupid to talk about today because it seems like it was obvious, but it's I mean, I don't know if like you can really compare it to other games, and if you want to like how you want to measure that. But I mean, it was huge in a time when games didn't all become that huge, and it still is huge in a way that other games I think still are not able to be.
Yeah, I think if you gonna compare like the Doom's impact, you gotta compare it to like the other firsts and big explosions. Basically, so like you can compare it to like Pong, right? Like Super Mario Brothers, or maybe Asteroids. I don't know, either Asteroids or Pong. Like Super Mario Brothers,
Tetris.
Yeah. Tetris is just a weird thing on its own. I actually don't like to compare Tetris with anything. Not in its impact and not in its design, really. Like, it's such a unique thing. But that's like a whole topic. I can do like 2 hours on Tetris. Yeah. So like I think since Doom, I think the only thing in gaming that made an impact that was comparably big is literally Minecraft. That gap gets bigger and bigger. You know what I mean? Like there is sort of Asteroids and Super Mario Brothers are somewhat close together, right? From Super Mario Bros. To Doom was also like 10 years, less than 10 years. I don't actually. What year did the Super Mario Bros. Came out? Do we at least know the year? We know the year, right?
I think it's like 1985.
Okay, so
that sounds right?
I have no idea. We didn't get any of that shit till 1992. So fuck fine you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Doom came out in December, in December of '93. So there is still like this, but since then, I would say Minecraft is the only sort of another sort of leap in popularity and surprise and sort of innovation. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But I actually, now that I think about it, I think it does compare, right? People do play like Minecraft at work, and kids play it at school, and like it's being taught, and it's like this big historical thing.
They're making a movie out of it.
Yeah, and they're making other games out of that game. So yeah, I will say probably yeah, but we didn't have anything in between then. People always say like, oh, yes, we had all these advancements in design and whatever technology, but there was never anything so culturally big.
Right.
In the computer world, in the computer gaming world, as Doom until Minecraft.
So, but I know you hated. I know you don't like talking about Doof, but this is a thing that it does have over Minecraft. Is I don't really know of any parody Minecraft games. Do you?
There's probably, Minecraft modding scene is very big, so there's probably.
Yeah, but this was like a company that was like part of Broderbund making Doom parody.
I'm sure there's like a Flash game somewhere where like there's like a zombie like fucking Notch or something. I really don't know. You
should tweet at him and ask. Since you guys do have a conversation going.
Yeah. I really don't know. I'm sure there is. The world of gaming now is vast and infinite, and I don't think an official what parody entertainment sort of proved as, I don't think a company will be doing that anytime soon.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But it's also, like, how is this really different from what like Running with Scissors are doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a way, maybe not that different. It just like the mission statement is a little bit different, but in the end, it's kind of the same thing.
Right.
So I don't know. Well, it's been great. Thank you for being here, David. I've enjoyed this. I never thought I will be talking about the sky maybe and WoD. I really didn't expect that happening, but
yeah, no, this was. I'm glad we found something that worked, and it was fun to take a deep dive down on some of this. You could get totally lost just and spend your whole life and ignore. Almost every other game series for the rest of your life, and you could just only scratch the surface of like what there is out there with just under this umbrella. So this was at least like a manageable, cool, fun thing. A lot of this stuff is pretty weird. The weird stuff we said is really, really weird.
Well, whatever. We if anything, we played it so other people wouldn't have to, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a It's public service.
In a way. So, so where can people find you online, and
Sure.
what do you want them? If people are getting familiarized with you with this podcast, what's the first place you recommend they go to?
Well, I mean, I am always tweeting about like the articles I'm writing and the things I'm doing. My Twitter handle is just my name. It's at David, and I'll just spell my last name. So it's at David Wolinsky. The interview series I was talking about before is called Don't Die. It's at nodon'tdie.com. It also has a Twitter handle, but that's sort of more just for tweeting out quotes and things people have told me. Best way to get at me is on Twitter, and you can check out the links there. I have a Patreon. I have an email newsletter, this, that, and the other. Yeah, that's basically it.
I would encourage everyone to check out David's work. I love the interviews. There's just something that I think it's also not a whole other topic, but not DOS related, where I think something has been lost in games journalism and interviews over the last decade or so, I would say.
Oh, thank you. I mean, yeah, I mean, there is certainly something similar spiritually in like there's like a preservationist attitude with the stuff I'm doing and the stuff you're doing. It sounds pretty audacious to say that like I said before, like trying to paint games onto a broader cultural canvas, but it's also just like it's kind of audacious to say like, oh yeah, I'm just going to document an entire medium. I don't really know that that's possible, but the through line is I try to pick up conversations that I feel like aren't really happening.
Right. Well, that's what why I urge everybody to check out those interviews. I mean, like it is something that's very unique that maybe kind of used to happen back. I remember certain game magazines like in the 90s tried doing that, but it's essentially stuff that as the era of press, big games and press releases came around. Like that doesn't happen anymore. Like personal conversations don't really happen in games. So I think what you do is very important. Like seriously, like in a way it's a service, because I think we've kind of we started treating games as this very sort of like product-like impersonal thing. Understandably so, but like it doesn't have to be that way. Like we don't have to paint all the games with that brush. Some games are made by two guys in a bedroom, and there is no reason that those two guys don't have to, can only talk about it in a way their publisher tells them to. Like today we're announcing this is a feature, you can stop time and like that's not what games are, to me at least.
Right. I mean, I think too, it's just like that's just part of what games are. Yeah. I mean, it's it hops all over the place, not erratically, but just I sort of am following my instincts. I do talk to people from the earliest days of gaming. People involved with Atari, all the way up to just someone who's working on something now. I mean, it's a lot of just. In addition to trying to get as many people in conversation, I explore a lot of parallels too. Like, so there is that thing you said, but there's also like trying to get people who like have insight onto where games and game culture might be headed based on like talking to people in other fields and other industries. So a lot of interviews this and last week. I'm really excited because I've been trying to get these interviews for a couple months. Just talking to people who are in rap culture, who are rappers or rap historians. I mean, video games and rap, it may sound like a weird comparison, but, they were both treated as fads when they started. They're both sort of seen as angry cultures, at least to an outside observer. They did both have these really stupid congressional hearings in the 90s. I mean, there's more to it than that, but I think, there's a lot of stuff to figure out, and I don't know that we necessarily figure stuff out on my project, but it's interesting to hear people talk, and I am grateful that they let me listen. So,
no, great.
So, but yeah, like those are the links to go check it out. And I tweet about like, you know, the interviews I'm doing and other stuff and other random weird things. You know, it's Twitter. So
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Twitter, that's where people can, if somebody doesn't know that they what they've been listening to for an hour and a half, I am Anatoly Shashkin, known as Das Nostalgic on Twitter, which is where most of my me opening my mouth happens is on Twitter. But you can find me just about anywhere where you can use a search engine of your choice to find Das Nostalgia, and it's most likely to be me.
if you want, I can probably track down some of those greeting cards I made in the 80s. If you want to post that too.
That's fine with me. Yeah, that can happen.
In the spirit of preserving everything, yes, we must do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. Well, thank you for being here. I had fun.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
And thanks to everybody for listening. And let's hope we'll hear each other again on another episode of Das Nostalgia Podcast. Goodbye.